Hi everybody, this is the Baseball High, the amazing, spectacular, terrific, the great one, the People's Champion, your host, the Hut, and welcome back to the Baseball Hut 2, and hope you like this video and subscribe. I want to talk again about the clowns on WFAN. Now this is a Mets video, you can tell by the title of this video. This is about what happened in the 2023 season with the Mets, how it sort of failed, and we can sort of go through it, but it's not really important for this particular video. But we'll mention certain things. There was an article that was written in The Athletic today, and it was about how the Mets failed. We know how the Mets failed. Most of the blame should fall upon the pitching staff, particularly the starters. They had a lot of difficulty getting out of the first inning without scoring, giving up runs. This was a team that had a difficult time scoring runs in the first inning. So the pitching staff was a big culprit in terms of why the team did not win 100 games like they won last year. They won 101 games last year, tied for first, but because of the new rules, they finished in second because they lost the tiebreaker to the scum-sucking Braves. Now, they basically brought back the same group of everyday players, that include Brandon Nimmo, Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, and Jeff McNeil. Now, in the offseason, the Mets gave Jeff McNeil a 5-year deal. They gave Brandon Nimmo an 8-year deal. Now, I have a very simple question. The article that came out that had Tommy Pham put out quotes. Let me read you some of these quotes from this article. And he's talking about, in this, he had a discussion with Tommy Pham. Now, Tommy, I have a great deal of respect for, because he worked his tail off to get himself in a position to where he went from being a 4th or 5th outfielder signed by the Mets late before spring training to where he was an everyday player here. And he played hard. That guy played hard. Give him a lot of credit. This is a guy, he claws and scraps and, and he's very outspoken in the clubhouse. He will tell you what he thinks about what's going on to the media, to fans, to his teammates, and to his opponents. We said this in the article. This is from Tommy Pham, what he said to Francisco Lindor. Quote, out of all the teams I played on, this is the least hardest working group of position players I've ever played with. Now, this is from MetsMemorized.online.com. This is paraphrasing it. Has been used as fodder by blowhard radio mouthpieces, and we'll get to those mouthpieces, to continue their previous rampages about the Mets clubhouse, which they do not, your host says, they don't go in the Met clubhouse. Okay? And that's being done without also providing the fact that the Athletic also went on to tell the reader that Tommy Pham held a lot of respect for the work ethic of Francisco Lindor, Pete Alonso, and Brandon Nimmo, players seen as team leaders. Now, as fans, I'm going to ask a very simple question. Does Brandon Nimmo come across as a guy that doesn't work hard? This is a guy that did not have a high school team, and he has become almost an all-star type player. He's been an everyday player, and he was an everyday player on a team that won 100 games last year. He scored 100 runs last year. He's a guy that was viewed as a future left fielder. He was a guy viewed as a 4th outfielder, and he's turned himself into an everyday player. Does that come across as a guy that's not working hard? I mean, that ridiculous. Pete Alonso, he was viewed in the minor leagues as a guy that was a bad defensive first baseman. And he worked his tail off to make himself more than adequate, if not better than average, first baseman, and he does not hurt the Mets in that position defensively. Francisco Lindor, I give him a lot of credit. Since the Mets made those trades, he has had a very positive attitude about the club, about what they did. He's been you can see it in the dugout, how giving he is to these young players. He's really provided a lot of leadership. The fact that he has played every day, he doesn't want to miss time. It's the same as the other three guys. Lonzo's played every day. other than missing that time with his wrist, getting hit by those scum-sucking Braves. And Brandon Nimmo has not missed any time either this year or last year. This has missed a lot of time. And McNeil has been healthy this year. So these guys, you have to work hard to be healthy. And the effort by these guys on the field has been terrific. Now we know that this was not a well-constructed team. I was thinking about this over the last few days. They had 3 guys going up north after spring training that were limited in what they did. Obviously, Daniel Vogelback is a complete disaster. He can't run. He can't play the field. And if he's not hitting for power, he's pretty much useless. He's pretty much a useless player. You had his designated runner, Tim LaCastro, who all he's good at is playing the outfield and being a designated runner for him. And now you have the return, Luis Guillorme, who can't hit. And when he's not fielding good or spectacularly, he's a disaster as a player. He had a walk-off about before he got injured, this last time. And the guy couldn't get a bunt down. He had a walk-off hit. He couldn't get a bunt down twice. He has been terrible this year. These are guys that shouldn't have been on the roster. All 3 of them shouldn't have been. So when you have those kind of players on your roster and sprinkled in with young players, then you start to wonder. I'm not putting the blame on terms as I don't know what happened. But obviously WFAN attacked the Mets, and in particular Pete Alonso, calling him a toxic player, a toxic situation. I never felt that this clubhouse was toxic. It may have been dysfunctional, but I never felt this clubhouse was toxic. I thought the clubhouse from 2 years ago was extremely toxic when you had Javi Baez putting the thumbs down, encouraging, being a bad influence over Francisco Lindor, and having Marcus Stroman in that clubhouse, one of the most toxic players in baseball in that clubhouse. And since he left the Mets, he's done nothing but attack the Mets fans. So that's a toxic situation. I don't remember the media going after Stroman since then. Of course not. But here we have from Odyssey.com, which is the WFAN CBS site. I cannot use their content on here to prove a point because certain individuals like Greg Giannotti and Boomer Esiason will strike down the channel. I'm not going to lose anything from this channel because of Norman and Greg. Here's a headline: BT and Sal rip Mets core amid reports of Tommy Pham's initial work ethic concerns. And a recent report by The Athletic, and in this article, they don't mention the respect that he has for the top 3 leaders of the Mets. And a recent report by The Athletic chronicling the downfall of the 23 Mets, former Met outfielder Tommy Pham reportedly called out the group for collectively not working as hard as other teams he had been on and a part of in his 10-year career. He had played for 5 different teams before joining the Mets this season. We did that. According to the report, I did but they don't put the whole thing in here. According to the report, Pham wanted to see more batting practice groups before games so he could get more work in the outfield tracking fly balls. He also, per the report, went on to say that he had a lot of respect for the work ethic of the team's core, like Lindor, Pete Alonso, and Brandon Nimmo. But the fact that Pham made that observation in the first place was enough to infuriate Spaz. Who is Spaz? Well, it's funny you should ask. Spaz is Sal Licata, who I call Spaz Licata. Because he has a new job working in the morning, midday morning, and he's a bit of a chameleon because he will go off the rails on his own program during the day. But he has a program on Baseball Night in New York on SNY, which is the Mets network, and he says nothing. He's silent. He's very tepid about it. Sal, Spaz, show some balls. Do it on the show. Complain about the Met clubhouse in a way that you did. He should have. First of all, this is the same guy that sat during a broadcast with a stupid bag over his head. He should wear that bag over his head all the time, quite frankly, because he's a disgrace. And he's a Met fan, he says. Think about that. This is what he says. How pathetic that is. That is damning on that team. I don't give a crap what anybody says. I said what I had to say about the clubhouse. I stand by. But Spaz, you came back from vacation and you were totally silent on it when everybody came out in defense of Pete Alonso. They need to change the core of this team. So who are you talking about? You want Pete Alonso? How are you replacing Pete? Can you explain that to me? How you explain Pete Alonso, dopey? If you read that article like I did, you will further believe that's the case. How is it acceptable to have position players that aren't working hard? What the hell is wrong with you guys? Something's off with that team, and if they don't change the core, at least one or two pieces from there. So what are we talking about? We know what he's talking about. He wants to get rid of Pete. He wants to get rid of McNeil. Don't say one or two pieces. Say who you want to say that. We already know that he said that Pete was toxic. It's not going to change next year regardless of who they bring in. The report also revealed that after Pham made that comment to Lindor, the Mets star shortstop went back to him before Pham was traded to Arizona and thanked Pham for teaching me how to work hard again. That was part of the report that infuriated BT. That's disgraceful, BT said. You're making $32 million in your prime. You're playing in New York for a team that expects to compete for a championship. And you forgot how to work hard. That is an embarrassment. That is an indictment on Lindor, on Alonso. How's it on Alonso? He's got to include Pete. If he doesn't include Pete, he has to continue the narrative that Pete is toxic. How's that an indictment on Pete? I can't explain it. That I cannot explain. Brandon Tierney's a dope. Spaz is a dope. These guys are puppets of a corporation of CBS. And what's the narrative from the corporation? Mets don't do anything right, and when they do it right, it's wrong, no matter what they do. These guys are wrong, okay? They've had zero proof about the fact that Pete is toxic. Now, we know that this is, when you don't win, okay, you will hear these kinds of stories that come out. We also know that there have been dysfunctional clubhouses in the past where the players have absolutely despised themselves. I can go through so many big teams of the last 100 and something years, and where teams were championship winning teams and despised each other, hated each other, and they won. The 70s Yankees. I can go back to the 1919 White Sox. You know, the Black Sox, they were the best team in baseball. They hated each other. The 1908 Cubs, Tinker, the Evers, the Chance, those three guys despised each other. But I'm just going randomly. These are some of the great teams of all time, and they hate each other. This thing about not working hard enough, I can see it with certain players, okay? You tell me that Brandon Nimmo is not a hard worker? I mean, really? You think that Lindor is not a hard worker? I mean, guy's playing every day. Give him credit. He's putting up the numbers over the last 2-3 months. Could he have done better against the Braves? Absolutely. Has he embraced New York the way he should have? No, he hasn't. Has he gotten better? Yes, he has. I will give him that. I'll give him credit on that. He's gotten much better. You got to come into I'll sort of explain this. This is how Piazza was. Piazza never smiled when he played. He always played with a major chip on his shoulder. Lindor has to get rid of the smiles. He has to go with his attitude that he's gonna play well. He's gonna conquer. He's gonna do whatever the hell he has to do to just bowl over teams. Pham has that attitude, but the thing about Tommy Pham, he's just not good enough. That's why if Pham had been a better player, this team would have been in better shape. The fact that he was a fifth outfielder. But there's a reason why Tommy's bounced around. So also keep that in mind as well. He does rub off some people rub people the wrong way. I mean, let's be fair. So, don't take this as gospel. So, I mean, I like Tommy when he played here for the Mets. I enjoyed his play. He's a tough player. And he's a tough out late in the game. I seen his numbers last year when there was word the Mets were trying to trade for him. I was like, the Mets should get him. Don't worry, don't get Darren Ruff. He would have been a better option for the Mets as that other outfielder. He would have been great here the last 2 months last year. They didn't bring him in. They didn't make the move. Went to dope behind Bloom, picked him up for whatever reason. But he is a tough player. He's going to play well. Arizona gets in the postseason. He'll get a lot of big hits for that team. This is a different team, obviously, than that young team is. So he had a different kind of effect. But just keep that in mind. And again, I don't take what Spaz says seriously. I don't take Brandon Tierney's a joke. Didn't he have like a failed ESPN show? He did. And Spaz is a chameleon. He'll say one thing on his dopey radio program and then say nothing on SNY. He'll be very tepid about it. He'll be afraid to wear a bag over his head. You know, that's a guy who shouldn't be on TV, by the way. All these guys on. I'm not saying I'm not Brad Pitt, but these guys shouldn't be on the radio. That's a damn sure. I mean, should be on the radio. Don't be on TV. And Spaz Licata is one of them. Oofa. Well, thank you for watching this video. Of course, please subscribe to the Baseball Hut too. Thank you, and I'll see you later.